All right, loyal listeners. Welcome to another episode of Agents Influence Podcast, Conversations with who? Me, Jason Cass. And today I have Mr. Joe Stephenson on here, and we are going to have a nice discussion about fraud. That's right. We're going to tell a little crime stories. Hopefully, I'm not trying to put the pressure on Joe. I'm just saying, he's probably got a couple good fraud stories for us loyal listeners out there. Before we do get on to Joe, remember, I want you to go to AIInditech.com, AIInditech.com on September 24th and through the 26th. We are having Indie Tech in beautiful Indianapolis, Indiana, right in America's heartland, also known as AKA America's Kitchen. So I want you to come on out, and I want you to join us. Last year was unbelievable. I think you've probably heard about it. We've already got people who are asking when it's going to go on sale. I think sometime after the first of the year. But go to AIInditech.com, be able to find out more about it. Look forward to seeing you there. Keep in mind, it's the only tech show in the independent insurance industry where you can go and just talk about tech and learn just about tech. There's no place else in the insurance industry you can do it. That's why Cass is bringing it to you. And I'm also bringing you real life stories. Joe, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thank you very much for having me.
Joe, tell me about you in about 30 minutes. Or 30 minutes. We're not even going to go that long on the podcast. In 30 seconds, tell the listeners who you are.
Sure. Years ago, I started off as a career in law enforcement. Was pretty eclectic. Did a lot of things there. That led me into eventually doing accident reconstruction work, which I started my own firm, and then that introduced me to the world of insurance. And from there, went into insurance SIU work, fraud, specifically handling pretty much every line of business nationally. And during that time frame, I obviously look a little bit older. The internet was really just starting to explode. So, Facebook was starting to come in, MySpace was present, and it was really that time in the world where we were starting to handle more and more things nationally, globally, and you really had to start learning how you were going to tap into all that data and information that was available online. So that's really where law enforcement and then insurance fraud really pushed me to start honing skills with how do you look at social media? Where do you find government records? How can I do all this remotely from a small corner of the world, but handle claims that are, 3,000, 4,000, 8,000 miles away? And that's pretty much my show.
Tell me, what does that mean? Like when we say fraud, there's so much different types of fraud. Was there a certain area for you?
So a lot of the stuff that I started initially dealing with was motor vehicle fraud. So you were talking about staged accidents, right? People who were, setting up, buying salvaged vehicles, throwing them in an intersection, and then pretending to get hurt, or faking their auto theft. But that developed into, you start to realize how much organized crime is involved in insurance fraud. I started doing cell phone store fraud and thefts in Houston, Texas, which inadvertently led me to certain groups who are actually stealing cars and sending them over to Iraq to be roadside bombs. It is interesting to see where these pieces of fraud start and where they ultimately end up. And you never know. It's always a different path sometimes. So, whether it's workers' comp, whether now we've got the issue of synthetic IDs being really big, we've got AI coming into the mix that's really helping fraudsters kind of up their game. All these things are just, it's massive. And now I think the Coalition on Insurance Fraud just did a summary earlier this year. It's $306 billion annually in insurance fraud. So it's a huge moneymaker for criminal organizations.
Wow. That's amazing, dude. That's amazing when I think about that. So what's this synthetic ID you're talking about? You mentioned.
Sure. So synthetic IDs are, years ago, you'd hear stories about somebody going to a cemetery, finding, a child that died early on, roughly the same age, and then they would go and get like a birth certificate or something else and assume that identity. It's along those same lines, but what they're doing now is with the help of AI, I can literally create somebody fictitiously. I can generate images of them that don't exist anywhere. I can create a date of birth. I can create a social insurance number if you're in Canada, a social security number if you're U.S., or another identity. Pretend that I'm an immigrant that doesn't have any paperwork, and really just start exploiting this. And what we're seeing is that we're getting a lot of fake policy holders. So with our push to do things online, to have less touch points, to make the process faster, what we've ended up doing is introducing the ability for people to literally just make people up, get policies, file claims, and do it all online. So you're seeing this explosive growth with that.
I mean, you just gave a great progression of the thing that I heard about when I was a kid in the 90s, that, oh, someone will pull out in front of you on purpose and they'll slam on the brakes so you hit them and you got to watch this and stuff, to now it's so much easier. Like you just said, the person could just recreate it. They could go get a fake policy. I mean, there's more than just a fake stage accident here. There is a whole plethora that makes it actually easier for them to do that. This is funny because us insurance agents, or most people who don't sit on that side of the desk, Joe, we don't think of that kind of stuff. Wow.
Yeah, and
Wow.
the problem is that there's obviously we're all in it to generate revenue, right? And we're looking for easy ways to make those less touch points, right? We want to keep somebody engaged in this process, so we're going to make it so that when you're filling out the policy app, it pre-populates your address. So you start typing your address, and we start suggesting vehicles that you might have registered to that address, or people who might live with you, so you can just click and move on. But what you're actually doing is you're opening up data leakage. And a criminal will eventually realize that I go to this form for a big insurance company, start typing in an address, they're going to tell me vehicles and people that live there. And now I can use that to leverage that information. And of course, this rolls into social media with our desire to be connected and share so much information that we're just giving criminals data that they can then use and either enhance an ID, create a fake ID, or assume your own ID and then start running. Which is why we've seen such a impact with, why we've seen such an impact with like IRS returns, fake returns, people stealing your tax returns, because they can get that data so easily online without, going to a credit, company or some other data provider. They can just go to Facebook.
You called that data leakage.
Correct.
And I like that because I had never thought about that. If I go to, let's just, somebody online, not picking on any company,
Right.
and I put in my information, and majority of the time today, the insurance companies don't even require the social security number. They can pull it off your date of birth and everything. I could literally just go type in my neighbor's stuff, and I would be able to find out what type of car they have. I mean, obviously, they're my neighbor, I know. But if I could just pull up somebody, I could pull up somebody on Zillow down and live in Miami and just put in their information and be able to almost pull up a lot of their cars and other things like that, just by knowing their date of birth and maybe their address and phone number, which is easy to get. Wow,
Right.
I never thought about how easy we're making this shit. Wow.
Well, and the funny part is, like, I was on LinkedIn the other day. Marketers, I follow a lot of marketers because I find that their usage of how to acquire information, is amazing to me, and we can leverage that for investigations. But I'm on LinkedIn the other day looking at an attorney's profile, and along with his whole school and work history and everything else, when you hit the contact information, his phone number's there, his cell phone number, his date of birth is in there, some additional information. How long does it take me to Google his name, get his wife's name, his wife's maiden name, his mom's maiden name, and I have everything I need to start creating Visa cards in his name. And I could run that for probably 3 or 4 months before he ever is aware that that's going on. We've made it very easy with technology. And of course, AI is bringing that to a new level.
Wow. Holy cow. Joe, I had never really thought about this. So how are we combating this? I mean, I could see that we're talking about how easy it is. I can imagine this is happening a lot because there's a bunch of worthless some bitches out there that don't want to actually work and they just want to steal. How in the world are you guys finding out if this person really has this synthetic ID or not? How are you tracing that?
So it's pattern development. When we start looking at characteristics, this is unfortunately why you've started to see like claims take longer and longer to process, right? That's not beneficial to anybody. That makes the insured upset, the third party claimant upset. We have to hold on to our reserves longer, right? That's not good for anybody. But there's so many red flags coming up sometimes that you have to slow the whole process down. You have to start saying, well, we're going to need some bank records, or we're going to need some cell phone records, or we're going to need to meet with you in person, because those are really the only ways that we can start ruling in whether somebody's real or ruling them out as being fictitious or maybe involved in some organized crime. So it's,
Gotcha.
it's all about the patterns. So, as we see more frauds develop, we can look at those patterns that, okay, we've seen this in 3 or 5 or 600 different claims. That's what we're going to look for immediately. Fast track the solid ones, get those paid, get those moving, but slow these other ones down. And it just takes
Wow.
time. It's a killer. It's a time suck.
Is there anything agents can do to try to help this process or be more aware?
Yeah, I think because typically agents, and I think about the relationship I have with my own agent, I've emailed them multiple times, right? So they have my email on file. They've talked to me. They kind of understand how I ask for things, right? When you start to see things that are uncharacteristic of that, the one thing with like organized crime, when they're doing massive synthetic ID fraud or fake policyholder fraud, it's not always the same person that is handling that ID, right? There's too many of them. So you might get an email that seems uncharacteristic, right? It's not the same verbiage, it's not set up the same way. You're asking for additional information and they pause and it takes days for them to get back to you. Look for those things that just kind of raise the hair on the back of your neck and go, oh, something's not right here. Because the agents are at the forefront of identifying things. They know their clients better than anyone else. So it's very easy for them to pick up and say, this doesn't make sense. Why is suddenly this person adding, somebody to their policy that, has never been mentioned before? It doesn't even have the same name, right? It just seems out of character.
Joe, no joke. We sell cyber insurance, so we have customers who have sent checks to the wrong, they told, hey, send all new checks, send them to this address and stuff like that. And a lot of that, now that awareness is getting out to the owner, they're starting to kind of pick that up. But I got hit literally 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
And what happened is very interesting. I got to tell you, I think they're very sophisticated. I really think that they're on their shit. Because whenever we busted it out, my accountant, we had just moved accountants, and I think that they knew that. Because the reason is they were able, because I had this new lady that was dealing with my accounts, and so we were trying to get to know each other. She doesn't know how my verbiage, as you're talking about, and I had sent her these emails and said, hey, I just checked, and there's enough money in the bank. Let's go ahead and get these out ASAP. I don't have invoices for them, blah, 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 blah. So we didn't know anything about this till I just happened to be on and just looking at my phone, and I noticed that there was an $8,800 charge, and I thought to myself, what did I spend $8,800 on? And then I'm thinking to myself, like, wow, did I really spend that money? And I just don't remember. And then I remembered I have a rule in our agency as partners. I can't spend more than $5,000 without at least clearing it with my business partner, right? So I thought, there's no way I spent $8,800. So I called, and my CPA, she's literally telling me, she's like, Jason, I have all the emails. And I said, well, I'm telling you right now, Lisa, you may have emails, but I didn't send them. The point of the story is when she sent the emails over to us, I showed them to my staff, and my staff was like, we would have known immediately that this was not you. The way that the verbiage was, everything was spelled correctly. We had a laugh over it, but it was true, right?
Right.
And it made me realize it was like, wow, I have never changed CPAs, and they just happened to get me right at that time, because if it would have been the prior CPA, they'd have been like, whoa, this isn't Jason, right? And it was really weird. To add to that, Joe, 3 weeks before this had happened, we received a phone call in our agency. And loyal listeners, please listen to this. This happens. We received a phone call, and they said that a check was trying to clear for $4,400, okay? And we thought to ourselves, they said, put Jason on the phone. So I got on the phone, and I went and looked at the bank account, and the lady says, I'm from the bank, and we have an insured here, Mr. Thomas Waddle, or whatever his name was, and he wants to know if this check for $4,400 will clear. And we just wanted to confirm it with you first. And so I thought it was weird. Those hairs stand up on the back. You start thinking,
Right.
like, something's going on here. And this is where my dumbass messed up, Joe, is I said I could have got him right here. But I said to him, I said, hey, before I okay this, what's the last 4 digits on the check account number? And she sat there, and my dumbass, not knowing it, said, is it beep, 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 beep? And she said, yep, that's it. And I said, oh. And then I said, you know what? Don't cash the check. If that person wants something, he can call me, right? Immediately when I hung up the phone, they sent an email to my CPA and said, hey, I just got off the phone. This check is cleared. Let's go ahead and send this out. They sent out the 4400. We didn't catch that one. Then they came back 3 weeks later and tried to go to 8800. I guess they just doubled it, right? I
Right.
don't know if that's what they do. They just double it until they see how long they can get away with this shit. But we caught it at the 8800. The bank still won't give us our money back. We had to file all these paperwork and documents, and we had to send all this verification.
And it becomes an absolute nightmare for you to try to get that money
Yes.
back. And what you just described is a telltale, like just classic fraud setup from organized crime. So we see it on the auto side. They start with something small, maybe a vandalism claim or a glass claim, and they test the waters. How easy was it for us to get through the process? How many questions did they ask? Did we get our check pretty quickly? Okay, great. We're going to give it some cool down time, and then we're going to come in and we're going to file a new claim. Maybe an accident with another car with a bunch of injuries. Let's see how long this one takes. And then they just keep upping and upping and upping. And then, while this was really easy, let's create 4 or 5 policies, and they'll all have accidents. And now we've got, 20 people involved, and maybe some bad medical providers in there that are, unbundling or upcharging codes for treatment that was never rendered, right? And they just build off of this stuff. But unfortunately, I thought where you were going with this is when you said you got on the phone that they then, used your voice, used some AI tools to, render that out, and then call your, one of your assistants, right?
That's
Just say,
next.
go ahead and clear it. And it is next, unfortunately.
It really is. And the thing that was just kind of eerie about the whole thing, Joe, is she was on the phone. The person, the bad person was on the phone talking to me. You know what I mean? This cyber and this fraud, a lot of times it's faceless. You know what I mean? You don't really know. And it was just eerie to realize that, oh my God, that was her on the phone. And I would have stopped this thing if I wouldn't have confirmed. Well, the last 4 wouldn't have mattered because they hit the email over to her. But one of the things I want to bring into the loyal listeners is be careful when you're making those changes of professionals, because if something's sitting in your computer or they're monitoring you, they're waiting for that. Because as I said, if we wouldn't have changed CPAs, these emails were too perfectly written. They would have never been as me. But because of that one thing, they either were smart, Joe, and knew that I'd changed, or they just got freaking lucky and happened to be right at that time.
And I'll throw this out to you too. This is one of the big things that I advocate for. Don't short yourself on software protection, right? All too often we look at something and we go, oh my God, that's just out of the budget. Like, I can't imagine spending $10,000 for security software for my email. But that one errant email that comes in, one employee clicks on a link and nothing happens, you don't see it, it's not highlighting anywhere, but is essentially watching and mimicking and then copying everything that happens in the agency. It's going to them, and then they're using that to commit these frauds against you, right? And that $10,000 piece of software would have halted everything. Like, we really have to start investing in our budgets into, technology and people who understand the technology, because this is the only way we're going to protect ourselves against it.
So, Joe, you bring in a good point, and I'm glad you bring that up, because I didn't bring it up, you did. That's something we need to look at, agents. I mean, for too long, for many years, I had asked agents, I would say, how much do you spend on the security and the maintenance, and the technical upkeep of your stuff? And they spend anywhere between $80 to $200 a month per desk to do this. And I used to think to myself, that is ridiculous. Who would spend that kind of money?
Right.
And then around 2019, I started getting smart. We had a business, actually, an insured of ours that was hit very hard. We thought, let's get serious about this. Now we have virtual intelligence, and we have virtual employees that are working over in the Philippines. So we've really tightened it down. And for loyal listeners, if you're out there, there's My Archway, but that's where we're at right now. They only do this type of security, as he's talking about, to prevent this stuff for insurance agency owners. I am actually leaving them and going to Lightspeed Solutions. So there's Lightspeed Voice, which you guys know is a partner of ours, and they have the phone system. They also have another side to their business called Lightspeed Solutions, and this is what they do, is taking care of trying to prevent these type of leakage and what are we going to say, fraud and cyber thefts and everything that's going out there. So be sure to check out Lightspeed Solutions for that. But yes, And you know what, Joe? I love what you said. Loyal listeners, listen to him. He's the expert. This isn't Lightspeed Solutions or Jason telling you it's going to cost you money. This is an expert who's saying it's going to cost you money and it will be worth it. Maybe it would have stopped mine, maybe not, but that cost me 14 grand, Joe, up to
Right.
now until I get the money back. You know what I mean? So it's
Well,
still
and
14
and
grand. Yeah.
and probably triple that when you think taking your time that you've spent, your employees' times that you've spent trying to do this,
Hmm.
bank people time, all these things add up and they are a cost to you. A bad breach for a small business dooms that business. They'll never recover. If they don't have the right insurance, right, the right coverage, or they don't have enough coverage, that's it. They're over.
Hmm.
One of these is just, it's devastating right now to a lot of people.
It is. It is. It is. And to our insureds, that's something we should always be talking about. I mean, we should be leading with cyber. You know what I mean, agents? Like literally, like they know they need auto insurance. They know they need home insurance because the government makes them get them or the bank does. But like when you start talking to somebody and you say, hey, how about life insurance? Even though they for sure know they're going to die, they still don't want to talk about it, right? Because it's down the road. If you sit here and say, hey, here's cyber and here's two or three things that happened to our clients recently, like we're selling a lot of cyber in the last 2 to 3 years just by asking that question. And one last thing out there, loyal listeners, if you're an agent and you're out there and let's say you're at a chamber event or you're at some community event and like you don't want to be sleazy or whatever, right? You don't want to talk about insurance. You shouldn't. One thing you can talk about is, hey, I had a business owner who had this cyber issue, and you can talk to it. Those usually make pretty damn interesting stories. And usually almost every time when we tell one of those stories about how someone was told to send all the new invoices to this email so that they could cash the checks, and it was really the checking account of the cyber criminal, you tell those stories, they become real, and that's how you can actually earn clients by actually not even like right now. I'm gonna get off this, but most of you are not going to tell your family that you listened to a podcast today about fraud with Jason, Cass, and Joe, okay? Because that shit sounds boring as hell, but it's actually pretty good, isn't it? So this is what I'm talking about. Whenever you're at these little events, these are ways that you can start educating the community and probably earn business by giving them value when they're not even your customer. So think about those things. Joe, wrapping up here, buddy. I try to keep between 20 and 30 minutes. Was there anything you wanted to get out there, anything you wanted to say before we wrap up?
The only thing that I would say is that technology is rapidly advancing, right? We're trying to handle this as quickly as we can. Just take the time to understand the technology that you're looking at, right? A vendor comes to you and starts talking about implementing this technology. Understand what it does from A to Z. I'm not going to give you away proprietary information and tell you how, the recipe actually works, but you can ask questions like, do you use cloud services? What security do you have in place? If I feed you data, where does that go? Do you resell it? What's the protection for my clients against you having a breach? Understand that process so that you can make the right decision in what you're using for technology. All too often, we're just how's the cost? What's the ROI? This is the next shiny thing I can put in place. Clients are going to love this. And then a year down the line, you realize, this was not a good choice. Everything I thought I made in revenue is now out the door plus 20%. So just be cautious. It's just going to be so rapid in its advancement that we've got to take our time to look at it.
We know the rapid advancement AI is making in the medical field, the insurance field, everywhere. We can't These are the people who are going to probably exploit it more than someone like me as a business owner. I mean, I'm trying to use AI, but I got to think of like actual legal new things that I can do with it, right? To help my customers, to help service them, to help communicate with them, to help provide them value. And these people can just use it really quickly to do the wrong thing, you know?
Right.
Sometimes
Well,
it's, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, like, ChatGPT is a perfect example. We all saw it, loved it. I pay for the paid version every month. I use it all the time. It's great. But it wasn't until there was a major issue that people realized, oh, everything I upload to ChatGPT is saved and they reuse it and it goes to somebody else, right? So if you're throwing out proprietary information in this, your
Right.
competitors are potentially going to have that. And that's the kind of things that I want people to think about is before you jump on board, just understand what the potential data leakage is on that.
Very good. Very well. Good way to close it up. Know the potential data leakage on the software and the devices that you are using. I love that shit. Data leakage, data leakage. So it's good stuff. I like terms like that. But hey, loyal listeners, you know what I do, and I do what I do. That was terrible. I say that every time. I've said it over 800 times, and I messed it up right there, Joe. For all you loyal listeners, just so you know, give me a little bit of break here. I'm in this new environment down in Florida in my new house, and this is my new thing. Joe and I have reset this damn meeting 3 times because my speaker's not working. I left my microphone in Illinois. So just bear with me here, because loyal listeners, you know why I do what I do, because I do it for you. Tell me your thoughts and tell me your ideas, and I'm going to tell the world what you have to say. This has been Jason Cass. He's Joe. We're out.